Hello and welcome to the McDonald's Happy Readers Holiday Story Club with me, Tom Fletcher, and I am super excited because today I'm going to be reading one of my books that I wrote to give away for free with a Happy Meal. So, are you sitting comfortably? Have you been for a wee? Okay, you can go now. I'll wait. Did you wash your hands? Have you picked your nose? Actually, no, don't do that. It's disgusting. Have you got your listening ears plugged in? I have. Let's begin. The land of the dinosaurs. Meet Izzy and Benji. They're just like you, except they have a magical time-traveling van that can take them to all kinds of amazing places. What exciting world will they go to this time? This story begins at the end. Yes, I know that's not the way they normally do, but this story is special. In it, you're going to travel backwards in time, forwards in time, and end up right here, back at the very beginning. Maybe it'll make more sense if we just jump straight in. So, this story begins at the end, and it begins with Izzy, and it begins with Izzy's van. Now, I know what you're thinking. A van? Surely you mean a bike or a scooter or a pair of roller skates? A van is not something many kids have, but Izzy's van, like this story, was special. It had been left to her by her grandpa when he died. It now lived on the driveway next to Izzy's garden. Inside, it was like a tiny house with a bookcase, a desk, and a comfy sofa. The van was the exact same shade of blue as Gramps' eyes, and Izzy loved it. She kept Gramps' desk just as he'd left it, with papers exploding out of the drawers. But Izzy's mum had helped her put up fairy lights, and Dad had filled the shelves with Izzy's favourite books. She went there to do her homework, or when she missed Gramps. Her van was cosy and fun, and a brilliant hiding place. In fact, that's exactly what she was doing when this story begins. Hiding. But that wasn't the most magically marvellous, fabulously fantastic, amazingly awesome thing about it. The most magically marvellous, fabulously fantastic, amazingly awesome thing about Izzy's van was that it could travel through time. I know, right? Don't worry, we'll get to that in a minute. Right now, Izzy wasn't thinking about time travel. She was thinking about her little cousin Benji and wondering if she could get away with not talking to him for the next 6 months. "Izzy!" Mum shouted. "Iz, come and say hello!" Izzy peeked out of the rear window. Auntie Julia was coming down the driveway carrying a huge box labelled Dinosaurs. Izzy's auntie wore lots of bangles that jingled when she walked. She was an archaeologist, someone who digs up things from the past that are buried underground. And she was going off to work in Greece for 6 months. Her son Benji would be staying with Izzy's family until she got back. "Mum, is my orange triceratops in that box? Can I get it out?" Benji yelled, jumping up at his mum, making her wobble and almost drop the box. "Why don't you wait until we've got the boxes inside?" said Auntie Julia. Mum laughed. "Benji, I'd forgotten how dinosaur mad you are," she said. "Hi, Auntie Sophie. I've got 12 boxes and 4 of them are full of dinosaurs." "Where's Izzy?" Benji asked Mum breathlessly. "I have no idea," Mum said, glancing at the van with a smile. Izzy shrank back out of sight, but it was too late. "Izzy!" said Benji, opening the van door. "Wow, Gramps' van! It's so cool that you still have this." "You can come in, but don't touch anything," Izzy told him. Benji was the most annoying cousin anyone could imagine. He wanted to be everywhere Izzy was, doing everything she was doing. Benji was the kind of kid who was always sticky. If you had to choose someone to go on a time-travelling adventure with, you wouldn't choose him. Unfortunately, Izzy didn't have a choice, because that's exactly what was about to happen. For example, in the time it's taken you to read that last sentence, Benji had tripped, knocked over a pile of Gramps' papers, and climbed into the van's front seat. He said, jerking the steering wheel from side to side as if he were driving a racing car. "Get out of there!" cried Izzy. "What's this for?" Benji pointed at a button on the steering wheel and peered closer. "Everyday mode? Exciting worlds mode? What does that mean?" "What indeed, Benji?" This was the button that would send the van back in time, but Izzy wasn't about to tell Benji that. Izzy was the only person in the world who knew the van's secrets. She'd done lots of tinkering with it since her very first adventure and picked up lots of clever new parts along the way, including the amazing Time Freeze 700 engine. All she had to do was press that button to turn on Exciting Worlds mode, start the engine, and whoosh, they'd be off. The van would take them to an amazing place or time. But only Izzy knew that. Like I said, she was the only person in the world who knew the van's secrets, and she definitely wasn't going to share them with Benji. "Benji, get out," Izzy said again. Okay. Benji started to scramble out of the front seat, but as he did so, his foot hit the button. At the same time, he fell forward and knocked the key in the ignition. There was a sudden blast of chilly air as the engine turned on, like someone had opened a freezer, and the two children heard a sound like ice cubes clunking through pipes. All the hairs on Izzy's arm sprang up. "What's going on?" Benji asked, his teeth chattering. Izzy didn't have time to explain. "Benji, seatbelt on and hold on tight," she yelled. The whole van jolted, and before Izzy could do anything, they were on the move. They shot backwards out of the garden, leaving a cloud of icy dust behind them, where the little grey particles remained frozen in the air in the shape of a ghostly van. Izzy tried to grab the handbrake, but the van bumped off of the pavement and into the quiet road. They were rolling backwards down the hill. Through the windscreen, Izzy and Benji saw houses and street lamps all swooshing into the distance. But they weren't just whizzing past, they were changing, transforming, reversing. Izzy saw the old front door of number 27 repainting itself so that the cracked paint now looked shiny and new. "What's happening?" Benji gasped. "We're not just travelling backwards down the hill, we're travelling back through time," shouted Izzy. The blurred houses had turned into old-fashioned cottages with thatched roofs. Then they became little wooden shacks before shrinking to nothing at all, leaving behind empty, grassy fields. The van was lurching this way and that until, just as suddenly as it started, it stopped. Everything was quiet, and all Izzy and Benji could hear was their breathing. Then Benji laughed out loud. "That was so cool!" He grinned. "Literally, can we do it again?" Izzy felt excitement bubble in her tummy as she wondered where the van had taken her this time. It was always a surprise, the most amazing surprise. She tried looking through the windscreen, but it was completely frosted over, like on a wintry morning. She went over to the door and turned the handle, but the door was frozen shut. Izzy sucked in a deep breath, turned the handle again, and then barged into the door with all her strength. It burst open, sending shards of ice flying out into a thick green jungle. Crunch. "Jungle?" she gasped as Benji appeared next to her. "Where are we? When are we?" I think I know," said Benji, pointing. There, down the hill, was a herd of huge, gigantic, real-life, wait for it, "Dinosaurs!" gasped Izzy. "Dinosaurs!" cheered Benji. That's right, dinosaurs. Izzy tried to think, but it was tricky because Benji was jumping up and down excitedly and the van was rocking from side to side. "We've got a time-travelling van!" "I've got a time-travelling van," Izzy told him. "You're a time-travelling stowaway." "Wait a minute." Benji stopped bouncing and stared at her. "You knew about this, didn't you?" Izzy sighed. "I suppose I'd better explain. Do you remember how Gramps always used to tell funny stories? Like the time he met a mermaid or accidentally entered a Roman chariot race with his van?" "Yeah," Benji said. "Well, I always thought that's what they were. Stories. But it turns out they were all true. One night, not long after Gramps died, I started the van by accident and I ended up in ancient Egypt. When I got back, I found this in his desk." Izzy rummaged around in the jumble of papers and found an old letter. It was faded, as if it had been written a long time ago and read over and over again. Darling Izzy, I leave you my van in the hope that you'll go to as many amazing places as I have. There is a special button on the steering wheel. When the everyday button is pressed, the van will be an ordinary vehicle. But when the button underneath is pressed, the van will be in exciting worlds mode and will choose an amazing place in space and time to take you to. After a little while, the van's horn will beep. Then you'll know it's time to hop back in, fasten your seatbelt, and head home. Whatever you do, you must get back to the van before the third beep, or you'll be stuck. Did I ever tell you about the time I got stuck with a family of cave people? I spoke in grunts for a week after I got home and had to tell everyone I had a sore throat. Have adventures as brilliant as you are. I love you, Gramps. Izzy and Benji were both quiet for a moment as they finished reading the letter. Then Benji whispered, "Whoa, Gramps met cave people." Who wants to try some caveman grunts like Gramps? That actually means, get on with it, Tom. Right, back to the story. Gramps had lots of adventures, said Izzy, nodding. Maybe he even came here. They both peeked out of the van again. They were surrounded by gigantic bushes and trees that were bigger than skyscrapers, stretching away to a steep cliff edge in the distance and the sea beyond. And there were dinosaurs everywhere. Thank you so much for joining me. I will see you again tomorrow for more adventures with Izzy and Benji.